Hi everyone, I'm Ranger John and this is Crater Lake National Park News. Crater Lake National Park remains closed to visitation to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Please remember to help do your part to help stop the spread by staying at or near your home, only traveling for essentials, and practicing good hygiene like washing your hands well. Together, we'll work to overcome this pandemic. The weather at the park's been beautiful with mostly sunny skies and a little bit of rain and snow earlier this week. Light and variable weather is going to continue throughout the weekend with a small % chance of showers, highs in the upper 40s, and lows right above freezing. There's no new snow on the ground. However, we have a current snow depth of 64 inches. That's 61% of average for the middle of April at Crater Lake. We received 325 inches of snow this year, which is only 72% of the 450 inches of snowfall we'd expect by mid-April. Although the depth of the snowpack is less than 2/3 of average, we received 95% of our average precipitation this year. This means the park is experiencing warmer winters with more rain and less snow than average. Today we have a special guest, Sean Morin. Sean is Crater Lake's lead terrestrial ecologist and has spent the last decade studying and protecting living things within the Crater Lake National Park boundaries. Before we connect with Sean, I'd like to share with you some of the common animals that you might see at Crater Lake National Park. If you've ever visited the park, then you probably have observed gold-mantled ground squirrels and gray jays. These are the two most common types of animals that are going to beg for your food when you're in the parking lot, and you know you can't feed them. You're also likely to see deer and marmots along the roadways. I'd like to show you some of the rare animals that we've caught on camera traps in the forest. These traps are baited with strong scents and meat, and they attract all sorts of critters, especially at night. Here's an animal that lives all over North America, the coyote. Another common animal to our continent, the bobcat, is elusive but active at Crater Lake National Park. Here's an animal that lives throughout the North American West, the elk. Now on to a couple species that live more specifically in our area. This is the Pacific fissure. It's a large member of the weasel family. Fissures are carnivores, and we're currently studying them in the park. Here's another animal that we find at Crater Lake. This one is particularly rare, the Sierra Nevada red fox. This species only lives in the high elevations of the Sierra Nevada mountains in California and the high Cascades Mountains in Oregon. Sean and his crew are currently studying the Sierra Nevada red fox, and we're hoping to learn more about its behavior. Of course, from beetles to bears, there are many other species that live in the park. Let's check in with Sean to see what he can teach us about the park's wildlife. Hi Sean, it's John over at the Crater Lake National Park News Studio. How are you doing?
Doing good, John. Just hanging here at the house, waiting to get the field season started.
Yeah, well, it's nice to see you looking happy and healthy. Okay, so you and me and everyone else is stuck in their house most of the time right now, and while that can feel a little boring for us, our pets are getting a lot of attention, and we're watching our pets' behavior on a day-to-day basis more than we may have before. And I'm wondering if we were able to go to Crater Lake right now and go out in the field, what kind of animal behaviors would we be seeing at this time of year? That seems to be kind of a transition time. Things are getting warmer,
It's actually a really neat time this time of year at Clear Lake because what happens up there, as you mentioned, we have a pretty hefty snowpack, and so a lot of the animals end up leaving the park, and they have to wait for the snow to start to melt before they can start coming back in. And right now, that's about that time. And so what we see is the elk herds, the deer herds, all starting to slowly migrate up into the park. This time of year, we also have our bears coming out of their dens. We did a 3-year study where we looked at the movements of black bears and found that between April and May is usually when they start coming out of their den sites and start scrounging for food.
Wow, it sounds like a lot of action. Just before we had you on, we were reviewing the park's weather, and we're comparing the park's current conditions against average conditions measured since 1931. And, we're at about less than 2/3, I think it was 61% of our average snowpack for this time of the year. And we're probably not going to see a lot more snow, new snow, I mean to say. How is that going to affect these behaviors and these species that you mentioned?
So a couple of ways that really has been impacting wildlife, and we've been seeing it and documenting it in the park is At a really lower elevations, we're just not getting the snow levels like we used to historically. And this means that in a lot of cases, wildlife can start moving into the park a lot sooner. As I mentioned, things like deer and elk migrate out of the park during the wintertime. But now they're able to move back into the park much earlier than what they have been able to do in the past. On the same token, the snow's starting to come a lot later in the year, so they're able to stay in the park longer as well. Now this doesn't happen every year, and they still migrate to those lower elevations, but just the timing of it is varying quite a bit. The other thing that's really neat is we have species that are just outside of the park, things that I've seen that I've documented at the lower elevations on the Forest Service land, and we're now starting to see those come into the park. One of the examples I have is raccoons. We documented our first raccoon this year.
Wow.
On some of our game cameras. Spotted skunks is another one. We've gotten a couple of spotted skunks on our game cameras this year. Some of the other species that I think we're going to start seeing more of are things like ringtails and gray fox, especially as things start warming up. And while we're seeing them just at the boundaries, if these patterns sort of persist and we're getting less and less snow, you're going to start seeing those things at higher and higher elevations till maybe at some point you're going to get the opportunity for visitors to see them on a regular basis. So those are kind of neat sort of things on the positive side. On the flip side of that, there's always a negative. We have a species like our rare red foxes here in Nevada, red fox, and the real nice thing about the red fox is they're small, they're lightweight, so they can stay on top of the snow, and it lets them move around in the winter and hunt in the winter. But as we start getting less snow, as we start getting more rain on snow events that really pack down that snow, that lets competitive species like coyotes move higher and higher up in elevation, come into areas earlier and earlier in the year. So what we've seen anecdotally over the last couple of years is a lot more coyote observations at higher elevations. The other one that I see or I anecdotally have been seeing is that historically our birds would start nesting and moisture would come in, it'd fall as snow, it would cover up those nests, and you'd kind of get this thermal blanket that lets the birds stay on the nest to sit on those eggs and keep them warm. But what we're starting to see now, or my guess is what's going on, is that the moisture's coming in, and initially it comes in as cold rain, and so it soaks the bird, it soaks the nest, and then you get snow that piles on top of that, and that just makes it a lot colder. So on those years where we've seen those late cold rains come in, we've noticed that nesting success on those species that we're studying, like spotted owls and bald eagles, tend to be a little lower in those years.
Well, Sean, it sounds like you have your work cut out for you this summer, and we all appreciate your efforts at the park, taking care of the life, and stay safe, keep your crew safe, as I'm sure you will, and I hope to see you face to face up at Crater Lake soon.
Well, I appreciate the chance to talk, and just remember I'm shorthanded this year, so if you're looking to get out of the office and go do a little bit of hiking around, don't be afraid to give me a call, John.
I will for sure. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it.
All right, you take care.
You too. Bye. Well, folks, you have a first-hand look there at the efforts at Crater Lake to protect wildlife, and thanks to Sean Moran and his crew this summer, and the rest of the staff that's taking care of Crater Lake. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time at Crater Lake National Park News.